Hey guys, beautiful day here in work as you can see, but I've got a little Kenny helping me out here today because I wanted to do a quick little video on prehistoric snakes. Now snakes have been around for a very long time and they've come in a lot of variety of types and species over the years there, and of course one you probably would have heard of as it made headlines when it was discovered and has remained a fairly popular animal since is of course Titanoboa. Titanoboa was for a long time believed to be the largest snake in the fossil record, and it really does kind of earn that reputation. It is an incredibly huge animal. And Titanoboa existed in a very interesting time frame as well, because it was one of the first, or at least one of the earlier large predators that lived just after the extinction of the dinosaurs. And coming from South America, the environment within which it would have lived would have been very swampy and it would have been covered in lush tropical rainforests most likely. And Titanoboa would have shared this home with several other types of animals, including giant turtles, huge types of crocodiles, and ancient relatives of caiman such as Purosaurus. However, Titanoboa was far from the only giant snake that we have found in the fossil record. One particularly recent example is that of Vasuki indicus, a giant species of snake all the way from India, measuring somewhere between 11 and 15 meters in length. However, perhaps most interesting about Vasuki is where it lies on the serpent family tree. You see, Vasuki lies in a family of snakes known as Matsoidae, and these are a very ancient but particularly interesting group of snakes. The actual snake that gave this group its name, Matsoia, actually lived during the Cretaceous period, right alongside some of the last dinosaurs ever to have existed on our planet. But this group of snakes persisted all throughout the Cenozoic up until relatively recently. Now, like Titanoboa and little Kenny the corn snake here, Matsoids would have been constrictors, so they would have grabbed their prey, wrapped around them, tightened those coils until they restricted the blood flow, and basically sent the prey animal into a cardiac arrest. An extremely deadly and efficient method of hunting that snakes have been employing for a very long time. However, there were some differences. Matsoids, unlike many modern day snakes, couldn't widen their jaws to such a degree where they could swallow extremely large prey. Just the setup of the jaw didn't allow it. So that did get scientists wondering as to how these snakes would have actually consumed their prey. One likely answer is that most of them probably would have hunted smaller animals there, animals that they could relatively easily swallow. However, there are a couple of other interesting theories in regards to certain species that sit within this family, as well as to how they may have eaten their prey. Some more grim theories, I might add. There is a type of snake that lives nowadays called a kukri snake, which is not related to the Matsoids. However, kukri snakes are rather unusual in that they eat their prey in a very strange manner. They are constrictors. However, kukri snakes, they have very specially adapted back teeth, curved back teeth, that actually allow them to slice through flesh. Most snakes just have simple recurved teeth that have sharp points but no serrated edge. Perfect for when you're just swallowing down prey whole. While constrictors, kukri snakes have been observed using those teeth to basically grab on, twist their bodies and pull apart the flesh, slicing through the flesh and allow them to eat their prey in smaller chunks. Now, we don't have evidence to suggest that Matsoids could do this. However, I have seen a few people theorizing about it, that it may have been possible in order to compensate for the fact that they couldn't disarticulate their jaws like many other kinds of snakes. Whether this is true or not, only more discoveries in time will tell. However, what we do know for the moment is that likely they would have picked smaller prey, and while that might make them sound a little bit less scary, keep in mind some of these snakes grew absolutely massive, including some that lived alongside our early ancestors. Early humans living in Australia would have had to watch out for a snake known as Wonambi. This was a large Matsoid that probably would have spent most of his time living around watering holes, as not only would that mean it would have a regular source of hydration in the harsh Australian wilderness, but also would have meant that it probably would have had a fairly relatively steady food source basically coming to it. And you can imagine how early hominids might have had to have been careful when this huge snake was lurking around a watering hole, because if they did not spot it, then humans probably would have been a nice sized snack for one of these animals. Even if they couldn't widen their jaws, we would have been able to fit down their gullets rather easily. There were also some prehistoric venomous snakes, the largest of which was a genus known as Leophis, and it potentially reached a length of between 3 and 4 meters. Now, while that's not near as large as the likes of Vasuki or Titanoboa, it indeed would have made it one of the largest venomous snakes, at least in the fossil record. Though we still do have extremely large venomous snakes today, such as certain types of vipers, such as rattlesnake, and you can imagine the venom yield. A common myth is that, smaller baby venomous snakes are more dangerous because they can't control their venom. Not true. Large venomous snakes, obviously, they have bigger venom glands, so they can pump you with a lot more toxins. And with something the size of Leophis, 3 to 4 meters, that would have a ridiculous venom yield, and definitely would have been an animal you want to avoid, or at least be very careful if you're around one. But as with all snakes, it would have used its venom only for 2 reasons. One, to hunt, or second reason, to defend itself. And that's the thing about snakes today. Obviously, there's accidents where people accidentally stumble across one, but general rule of thumb is if you see a snake out in the wild, whether you think it's venomous or not, leave it alone. You can't go wrong if you just leave the animals alone. Terrifying as these concepts are, I think many of these ancient types of snakes would have been absolutely amazing to see just the scale of them in real life, particularly animals like Titanoboa and Vasuki. And it's a shame some of them aren't still around today, but we do have many types of snakes, like he's after finding his way into my jacket here now where it's nice and warm. I'm going to put him back in his enclosure here now. But many types of beautiful snakes living today, like Kenny the corn snake and many others. And thank you, Kenny, for your help. Couldn't have done it without you. Nope. Yeah, what's that?